So we're now into August. I think it's time to have a look at an update on the global speed stick leaderboard. Hello, yes, it's Joe here for Joyrider TV, and yes, we are going to take a look at the new updated global leaderboard of the speed stick. What on earth is this that you're talking about? I hear you cry. Well, you can go sailing, have a GPS on board your boat, whether it is your telephone, perhaps you've got a GPS watch, perhaps you've got a GoPro with the GPS built in, anything like that. And then you could send me the results and get on the leaderboard on any type of sailing boat. That's very exciting. We've now had on the global leaderboard 118 entries. So what I'm going to do is going through all 118 positions is going to be quite time consuming. So instead, we're going to go through the new entries or the ones that have moved, and then we'll have a look at the full top 20 on the leaderboard. So let's kick this thing off. In 118th position from Lake Garda, Italy, banging in a 9.2 knots on a Topaz 14, we've got Gianluca. Then in 116th position, sailing in Svendborg, Denmark, 10.8 knots on a Hobie T1, we've got Runebeck. Then in the UK, in Rye Bay, East Sussex, on the south coast there, at 11.7 knots. In 114th position, we've got Chris, Rhett and Josh. That's 3 up on a Dart 18. Then this is a notching it up. In 110th, we've got Christian on the Hobie 16 solo with a speed of 13.06 knots. Then heading up the leaderboard slightly, in 108th, we have got Logan and Scott sailing in Mission Bay, California on a Hobie 18 SX with a speed of 13.9 knots. Just ahead, in 107th, on a Hobie 14 Turbo, we've got Adam and Marike in Australia on the Gold Coast there, 14.2. Then in 106th position, the man of mystery himself, Adventure Brad, on a Hobie 14, 14.3 knots in an undisclosed location. We had to keep that one top secret. Then pinging it in Chesapeake, is that how you say that? Bay, VA, is that Virginia? I hope it is. 14.77 knots. Solo on his Hobie 16 for Chris Eubanks there in 102nd position. Then just poking it in front in 101st position in Marconi, Essex. In the UK, we've got Lee on a Dart 15 Sprint, 14.8 knots. Now, notching it up into 99th, that is inside the top 100 for Neek and Lillian in Bovenved, Netherlands on a Hobie 16, 15 knots there. Incidentally, in case you're looking at the speed stick and thinking, if we've got 2 boats on the same speed, how are we choosing which one goes in front? Basically, the way that I'm doing it to keep it fair and consistent is whichever speed came in the latest gets notched up on the leaderboard, so that would just put it ahead, but really it's of course the same. So in 98th position, we've got Philip and Nathaniel in Lindigo, Sweden on the Hobie 16 Easy Sail, taking it easy, 15.1. Then in 97th position, Eagle Creek, Indiana, USA, 15.28 knots for Wild Bob on the Hobie 20. Great stuff there, Bob. Nice to have you on the leaderboard. Then in 96th position, we've got Mark Gallagher, solo on his 16 in Clearwater, Florida, USA, 15.3 knots there. Then notching it up, 94th position for Richard and Niels on the Hobie 16 on the Rockport Reservoir, Utah, USA, 15.46 knots. Just featured on Show Us Your Cat, actually. Check out that last episode. Then notching it up in Germany on Markelbergersee. That's good pronunciation, I think you'll find. For Wolf on his Topcat K2. And I think one of the first Topcats we've got on the leaderboard. They're 15.5 knots. Exciting stuff. Then heading to 90th position for Eliano and Danielle on Bracciano Lake, Italy, on a Hobie Tiger, 15.66 knots. Then Danielle also, this time skippering the Hobie Tiger with Luca in 87th position on the Bracciano Lake, Italy, on the Tiger, 15.87 knots. And then we've got Lee on the Sprint 15 on the River Blackwater, UK. In fact, I can see I've made a mistake here. Lee is on the leaderboard twice on the same boat. All right, I will amend this. 16.1 knots there for Lee in 85th position. And then in 82nd position, notching it up on the Prindle 15, we've got Frank, Lake Ontario, Canada, of course, for Frank there, 16.25 knots. And breathe. Thank you. And then in 73rd position, we've got Neil and Frank on, this is the same Frank actually crewing for Neil, on the Hobie 16, Lake Ontario, Canada, not far from Niagara Falls, I believe. 16.68 knots on a Hobie 16. Then in 71st position, we're heading to Moscow, Russia, with Elena and Ilya on a Hobie 16, 16.74 knots. Just poking it ahead in Torbole, Lake Garda, Italy. We've got Jochen in 70th on the Hobie 18 Magnum with 16.8 knots. The Magnum, yes, that's the one with wings. That's how you can fly, I'm sure. Then in 66th position, we've got Oliver on a Hobie 17 with Spinnaker on Grosser Pionersee, Germany. Got Laura, who's from Germany, laughing at my German lake pronunciation there. And that is Wolf and Christian on a Tiger. No, it isn't. That was Oliver on the Hobie 17. Great stuff there, Oliver. Then in 63rd position on Markelbergersee, Germany, is Wolf and Christian on the Tiger, 17.28 knots. Then in 62nd position, this is a big one, we've got a Hobie 21 Sport Cruiser with Tony and Guy on Lake Easnor, California, USA, 17.37 knots. Then we're in 61st position, heading back to Mission Bay, California, where we've got Scott solo on the Hobie 18 SX, 17.38 knots. Then in 58th position, notching it up, we've got Richard and Geen on Rockport Reservoir, Utah, USA, Hobie 16, 17.4 knots. Then notching it up for Gary and Russell in 54th position on the Hobie 16 in Mercury Bay, New Zealand, 17.5 knots. Then in 53rd position, solo on the 16, Cultus Lake, Oregon, USA, 17.73 knots for Scott there. Then notching it up in 49th, and yes, we are now inside the top 50. Exciting times for Todd there in 49th. Solo on a 16 on Lake Hartwell, Georgia, USA, banging in 18 knots. Now we're hitting the big speeds. Well done, Todd. Then in 47th on a Nacra F18 with a speed of 18.9 knots. We've got Martin and Kuba in Poland on Gogzalgowicki Lake, Poland. There, I wasn't sure if I was even going to take on the pronunciation of that lake there. Then in 45th, solo on the 16 for Richard, Rockport Reservoir, Utah. Some good representation for Rockport Reservoir on the speed stick, 18.1 knots. And then notching it up for Shane and Brian on a Hobie 16 in California, USA, 18.24 knots. Just edging ahead for Philippe and Jean-Luc on a Hobie 16 in 39th position in Lacanau, France, 18.25 knots. Oh my goodness, this is tight. Then in 38th position for Daniel on a Hobie 16 solo in Bovenvide, Netherlands, with 18.26 knots. Could this get any tighter? I don't know if it could. Then we've got in 35th position, notching it up, we've got Andrew and Julie on the Hobie 16 in Panama City, Florida, USA, with a speed of 18.43 knots. Whew. Then in 31st, notching it up for Chris and Agnes on Ammersee in Germany on the Hobie 16 with a speed of 19 knots. Also with a speed of 19 knots, but this result came in a bit more recently, 30th position for Philippe and Nathaniel on a 16 in Lindigo, Sweden. Very exciting. I don't know if you can contain yourself. I know that I certainly am close to the edge right now. Then in 29th position on a Hobie Tiger in Grevelingen, Netherlands, 19.03 knots on a Tiger for Holger and Guido. And then we've got Shane and Brian again, but on a different boat here on the Hobie 20 Miracle in Lake Isanor, California, 19.12 knots, 28th position. Then just nudging ahead, and this is a big one, this is 3 up on a Dart 18, Hugh, Emily and Mia in Barry, Wales, 19.2 knots. This is getting tight and fast. Then the next one on an Inter 20 back in Poland in the unpronounceable lake. We've got Cuba and Robert in 23rd on a Nacra Inter 20, 19.49 knots. And what a boat that is, as endorsed by our very own Pirate Sam here on the Wildwind Beach. Then in 21st position on a Nacra 570 on the Baltic Sea, Germany, we've got Timo and Lutz, 20.19 knots. We are hitting the big speeds now. Then in 20th position on a Hobie 16 in Ammersee. Am I repeating myself? I don't care, we're going back in time. We've got Chris and Lutz, Hobie 16, 20.90 knots. Then in 19th position, it's Robert and Kuba on a Tornado. Yes, good to have a Tornado on the leaderboard there in Poland in 20.97 knots. And that is really cooking it there on the Tornado. Then in 18th position, we've got Scott and Eames on Cultus Lake, Oregon on a Hobie 16, 21.38 knots. And then in 17th position, and we have got our very own Leia and Ernie on a Hobie 16 in Vasiliki, Greece. That's actually here with a speed of 21.6 knots. Absolutely cooking, but we're not having any more entries for Vasiliki on the global leaderboard. Vasiliki is now getting its own leaderboard because it's so easy to go fast here. So that would be unfair on the rest of the world, I think, in my opinion anyway. Then in 14th position, notching it up on a Hobie Fox, we've got Tom and Arthur in Lake Annecy, France, with a speed of 21.8 knots. That is rapid. Then in 13th position, we've got Michael, or is that Mikhail, on an RS16 solo in Croatia with a speed of 22 knots. That is absolutely flying. I can hardly believe it, but if it's on the leaderboard, it happened. So good speed there in 13th position. Now, sorry, I said I was going to do the complete top 20, but we're actually going complete now. In 12th position, we've got Steve and Oscar on an RS800. That is a monohull in the top 15 in Axmouth, South Devon, UK, 22.2 knots. We know that the 800 is fast. It's just how big are your cojones? I think cojones is the word. Yes. All right, in 11th position, we've got Adam and Stasik on a Hobie 16 in Poland, 22.24 knots, cooking the goose until it's crispy. All right, and then we're banging it into the top 10 now. We've got Oliver and Will on a Hobie Fox on Mallorca, Spain, with a speed of 22.3 knots. Rapid. Then in 9th position, hitting it on a Hobie 16 in Maputo, Mozambique, we've got Damien, 22.4 knots. 22.4 knots is popular, so it seems. Then in 8th position, we've got Julian on a foiling A-class, Graph and Water, UK. That's 22.4 knots. There was a whoop here from the studio audience. Then in 7th position, in Graveningmeer, Netherlands, we've got Koen and the Roos on a Nacra Inter 20 with a speed of 22.5. The studio audience can hardly contain themselves. This is amazing. Then in 6th position on a Hobie 16 with a speed of 23 knots. 23 knots is where the party starts these days. And we have got Dave and Isaac on a Hobie 16, Tweed Heads, New South Wales, USA. That's a great speed. Well done. I believe that's on the boat called Sledder, which was featured on Show Us Your Cat perhaps 15 episodes ago. Then in 5th position here in Vasiliki Bay, we've got Dennis, one of the fastest sailors on the planet, on an FX1, banging in a speed of 21.35 knots. That is so fast that I think there was probably bits of the boat falling off as it was going along. So fast, unbelievable. Then in 4th position on Rappel Lake, Chile. We're heading to Chile for 4th place. I'm pretty excited here. How's the studio audience? Yeah, studio audience pretty excited. We've got Johan and Matthias on a Nacra Infusion F18 with a speed of 24.7 knots. That is absolutely flying. Whew. Now we're into the top 3. So for 3rd position with a speed of 25.1 knots in Alassio, Italy, on a Flying Dutchman monohull, the Olympic class from back in the day. We've got Pietro and Fabio absolutely banging it. That is ridiculous to go that fast Oh my goodness. Even faster in second position in Galveston Bay, Texas, USA, with a speed of 25.8 knots. We've got Bryce and Scott on a Prindle 18.2. Unlucky guys, you've lost the top slot, but this top slot is going to a Hobie 16. We knew this was going to happen. So we've got Steve and Trey in Cocoa Beach, Florida, USA, with a speed of 26 knots. Ah! Yeah, the studio audience on the floor here. So well done, Steve and Trey, for banging in such a big speed in the top spot there. Absolutely incredible. That must have been very exciting. I am going to have to pull my high-speed socks up to get any closer to that. So very well done to everybody on the leaderboard. We've also, of course, got the Hobie 16 leaderboard. The top three on the Hobie 16 leaderboard. Third position, we've got Damien Maputo, Mozambique. Second, Dave and Isaac, New South Wales, Australia. And then in first place, of course, we've got Steve and Trey there in Cocoa Beach, Florida. Great work there. So thanks very much to everybody who's been getting involved with the leaderboard. There's a link to the full leaderboard in the description below, where you can check out all of the positions. If you want to get involved, also in the description below is the instructions of what you have to do if you want to get on the leaderboard. This is not just if you've just gone back in time that you've gone so fast, but if you want to have a permanent record of your personal top speed, this is a good facility for doing that. So do get involved. Send me the speed and a bit of evidence, like a screenshot of your GPS device, just so that we've got some sort of authentication there. That would be ideal. And if somehow, if you're not yet subscribed yet to Joyrider TV, now's a good time to hit the subscribe button. But give this video a like as well, and we'll be back more on Joyrider TV with some more soon. On Joyrider TV soon with some more. So thanks very much. Well done. Stay safe out there. Thank you.